I have it very easy compared to the people in this situation, and probably most people watching this also have it very easy compared to the people in this situation that we are talking about. This is when we can make the right decisions. This is when we can prepare ourselves for that day of trial. What happened to Israel on October 7th, just last Saturday, has been compared to the 2001 9/11 attacks in the United States, and that is not an exaggeration. In fact, to be fair, what happened in Israel just the other day is much, much more severe when you compare the casualty rate compared to the population. The casualty rate as a percentage of the population was much higher in Israel on October 7th, 2023 than it was during the 9/11 attacks in the United States. So it is not an exaggeration to call this Israel's 9/11. When you think about it, just how much people have given, how much everything is centered around security for the Jewish Israeli people, and to prevent this kind of thing, to make the people safe, to make this a state where people can thrive and live somewhat normal lives. They give a lot for that. They have universal conscription. They have all kinds of security measures. They receive a lot of criticism from the rest of the world. And in spite of all that, this happened. And it is disastrous, catastrophic. I can't say how I would feel if I were a victim or if I was close to a victim of these attacks, of what happened. It's just a monstrous, terrible thing that no one expects it to happen. You know, you can always imagine, yes, there's this and that possibility, but no one expects something like that to happen. All of a sudden, so many lives gone, such a terrible fright put over the population. Now, I have always been a supporter of Israel. The nation state of Israel is given the Jewish people a place where they can be free, be safe, where they can develop, where they can preserve their culture. They've restored the Hebrew language. And so many people and so many things that have come out of Israel have been a benefit to the greater world even. Now, I'm also very sympathetic to the Palestinian people. I think overall in this conflict between Israel and the Palestinians, it's the Palestinians who have been on the back foot. They have less power and they have suffered more. They have suffered more displacement, more casualties, lower standards of living, more repression. They have suffered more, and I have to sympathize with the side that has suffered more. In fact, my sympathies in general when looking at worldwide politics is to side with the weaker side with the third world, side with the side that is being opposed by NATO, the United States, Israel in this case. And the Palestinian people are a prime example of that, a people born in war, generation after generation, born of war, deprivation, and cycles of killing and revenge. Now, just in those brief sentences there, expressing my support for the Israelis and for the Palestinians, I'm sure I've said things that people watching this would disagree with, and that's okay. You know, we all have our biases, our blind spots, our prejudices. We all have ways that we are naturally inclined to lean towards. I have my set of ways, and you have your set of ways. And I'm sure there's people who would pick different things from what I said and find disagreement to it in those things. And that's okay, because, you know, I'm going to be right and wrong on some things, and so is everybody else. So of course we're never going to have complete agreement on what side we should fall on or what opinions we should take towards the different people who are involved in war. War, just the height of the worst of human emotions, brings out the worst in people, brings out murder, brings out revenge, and it creates these cycles, these loops of doom, really. And it's hard to be untouched by such a thing as war, and for one's emotions to not rise and make one angry and make one perhaps angry and distrustful of someone who disagrees with them. So I talked a bit about what Israel suffered and the catastrophic event that they have just experienced. 700 dead, supposedly, on Saturday, October 7th itself, and hundreds more dead in the days following, in the military actions following. Now we look at the other side, at the Palestinian side, the people in Gaza, and what they have suffered. It is even much worse. If we're calling October 7th, 2023, Israel's 9/11, then what would you call what the people of Gaza have suffered? Their population and the casualties they have taken. And this is not a new event for them. This may be an unprecedented shock for Israel. This is not unprecedented for the people of Gaza, tragically. And just imagine to live in a place and be part of a people whose lives are so affected by violence as the people of Gaza. What percentage of deaths can be linked to outright violence by the Israeli military, or just a side effect of the sanctions and the deprivations that the people of Gaza suffer? They are truly a people born and raised in deprivation, murder, theft, extremism, and just all around misery, what most modern people would consider absolute misery. Personally, if I was living in Gaza right now, I would be furious with what Hamas did. I would be furious at the people in my government making this decision to carry out such an attack and bring such wrath and hell on to my doorstep, on my neighborhood. And that's the thing that Israel has to face. You know, when Israel confronts this issue, they can't treat Hamas like a criminal organization. They can't just go to the Palestinian authorities and say, hey, your people did this, hand them over, we need to bring them to justice. No, the authorities, in the case of Gaza and Hamas, the authorities are the perpetrators. It's the police, the military, the civil authorities, the bureaucracy. They are the ones who did this. So it is a state of war that has been imposed on Israel in this situation, and they are responding with acts of war themselves. It's a hellish situation. And again, we could disagree on the build up to this, disagree on the timeline, disagree on who's right and who's wrong. But I think we can all see that this is a horrific, terrible situation for the Israeli people. And put yourself in the place of those in Gaza, the Palestinian people. It is an even much worse, much more nightmare situation for them. They cannot flee. They cannot defend themselves. They are stuck facing this wrath. There is so much instruction in the New Testament, the way Jesus taught us to behave towards people, that just becomes so much more important in times like this. You know, these commandments, these morals, the things that we hold up on pedestals, these things are worthless if not applied in the worst situations. These aren't commandments for the little things. These aren't solutions to the little problems. Morals and the commandments of God himself and the things that are in our heart that guide us, that direct us to do the right thing, those things are put to the test by the worst situations, and that's where those things have to come through, have to succeed. I am an absolute and firm believer in the gospel, in the New Testament, in the commandments of Jesus. And I've been told, you know, how can you say those things? What if this happened? What if that happened? How would you react to those situations? And interestingly, it's not secular people who have pointed that out to me. It's usually other Christians who have a hard time with the commandments of Jesus, the things that Jesus teaches, the things that he expects of his followers, the things that he ordains for the betterment of this world. A lot of Christians who think that they're right just by being on the right team, they start looking for excuses, ways around those commandments, saying, you know, well, how can you believe that? How can you say that? What would you do in this or that scenario? And then the person will invent some kind of scenario where it would seem that a violent reaction is the best response. And all I can say two things. One, I don't know how I would react. And two, don't tempt the Lord. Because this isn't about you or me, how we feel or how we would react in some situation like what the people of Israel or the people of Gaza are facing. These principles that we supposedly live by, if we supposedly believe in, they have to be better than us. If we believe that these things were given by God himself, that these were ordained by Jesus Christ, the one who suffered unjustly and yet did the right thing, then we have to believe that these things are right, whether we can understand them or not. And none of this is according to our own righteousness, our own understanding. It's not about the way that I would do something. I don't know how I would react. If I was the parent of one of these people kidnapped in Israel, I don't know how I would react. I might end up being a very vengeful person. I might eagerly answer the call up of reserves and be hoping to be sent into Gaza to settle the score. If I was a Palestinian who has, with the history of suffering that my family would supposedly have, I don't know how I would react. Were we to face again yet another catastrophic apocalyptic bombardment? I don't know, but it's not about me. It's not about our feelings. These things, the right way to do things are bigger than us, and that's why they are laws. You know, I have it very easy compared to the people in this situation, and probably most people watching this also have it very easy compared to the people in this situation that we are talking about. This is when we can make the right decisions. This is when we can strengthen ourselves and keep our minds on what is right and prepare ourselves for that day of trial, which comes. There's always trials. There's going to be that fire, that flood that reveals what you're made of. What are your morals? Are they made of something that lasts? Are they made of something that will go through the trial and still shine or not? Think about the book of Job, which I just recently have been reading through. In Job chapter 1, after he receives the news of the death of his children, listen to what he says. He says, "Naked came I out of my mother's womb, and naked shall I return thither. The Lord gave, and the Lord hath taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord." In all this Job sinned not, nor charged God foolishly. Man, what a lesson, what an example to go by. Don't sin. Don't charge God foolishly. Don't tempt the Lord. These things are bigger than us. The only way to be the kind of person that Jesus wants us to be is to be clothed in his righteousness. I'm doing a series on the book of Revelation that you can watch on the channel. And again and again and again, what comes up, the people who are on the right side of things, the people who are blessed, protected, who Jesus will intervene for, are the people who are clothed in Jesus's righteousness. It's according to his commandments, to his words, to his example that we live and that we thrive and that we are the kind of people that we ought to be. It's not about ourselves. It's not about what we suffer. Like Paul says, we are always bearing in ourselves the dying of our Lord Jesus. It's all about him, what he did, what he wants, what he commands. Don't tempt the Lord. Don't charge God foolishly. Keep the commandments of Jesus. That example of Job, I'm going to read a couple verses now from the next chapter of Job, where Job's wife, who would have also probably been a very good and upright woman, but she was brought to the end of her rope. And she says to him, "Dost thou still retain thine integrity? Curse God and die." But he said unto her, "Thou speakest as one of the foolish women speaketh. What? Shall we receive good at the hand of God, and shall we not receive evil?" In all this did not Job sin with his lips. This reminds me of actually somebody who has come up out of this story, an amazing sample, someone who is suffering, and yet he is really setting, I think, an example that I hope if something were to happen to me, like what has happened over the last few days in Israel and Gaza, I hope my reaction would be like this man, this Yaakov Argamani. who lost his daughter. His daughter was kidnapped by Hamas militants on October 7th. There's this famous video of her being taken away on a motorcycle, pleading for help. And he's given a few interviews. He is very broken up. He's cried during his interviews. But he said more than once that he doesn't want there to be violence over this. He has even said that he recognizes the hurt that the other people, that the people in Gaza are suffering, and that they're hurting too. And he has said there needs to be a negotiated, peaceful solution to this. He doesn't want violence. I don't know how I would react. I don't know if I could live up to his sample. But there's these lights that are shining in the world. There's so much darkness, but there are these good people that come out, and we can look to them for examples. We know what's right. Every day, no matter what happened the day before, what happened the hour before, we always start with a baseline. There's always a starting point. Every moment is a new starting point where we can make the right decision to do the right thing or do the wrong thing, to act by our wicked passions or act selflessly and act through our hurt in love, doing the right thing. So all these questions, what would you do? How would you react? How can you blame this side or that side for reacting the way they do? How can you blame the Palestinians, Hamas, for using violence when all they suffered? How could you blame the Israelis and their military for this response that they are implementing on their enemies? How could you blame them, looking at what they have just suffered? Don't tempt the Lord. Don't go into those temptations. Look for the light. Look for the good people. Look for the examples. Know that your day will come. There will be a time when we are all put through the test, and we're all going to either shine or we're going to be part of the problem. And I'm just so thankful that I live in this time and place of peace. And I hope that when the time comes that things aren't so easy, I hope that I'll be on the right side of things, making the right decisions. Well, thanks for watching. Bye for now.